Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Bringing Families to the Table, Family Engagement for Struggling Students. I'm Laura Magnuson, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. I'm a Technical Assistance Liaison for the Center. Today we have a number of panelists who will bring a variety of different perspectives regarding family engagement. So we'll get started with a quick introduction to the National Center on Intensive Intervention, and we'll discuss the value of family engagement for students with intensive needs. We'll then hear perspectives from our panelists. First, Kate Augustyn will discuss a district's perspective. Next, Kelly Orginski will share a state's perspective as well as a parent's perspective. And lastly, Debra Jennings will share a national perspective, including the I-5 Family Involvement Model. Lastly, we'll end with questions and discussion. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit more about each of our panelists. Kate Augustyn began working with parents as the Executive Director of Tuesday's Child, a nonprofit in Chicago, Illinois, for 12 years. She then moved to Michigan and worked with ECSE and then CI classes for 5 years. And then she became the Special Education Director 10 years ago at Grand Haven Area Public Schools. Debra Jennings is the Executive Co-Director of the Statewide Parent Advocacy Network, and she's also the Director of the newly funded Center for Parent Information and Resources. Kelly Orginski is a statewide trainer at the Michigan Alliance for Families and has over 30 years of experience in special education and indirect programs and services to students with disabilities, parents, educators, and state and local agencies. So before we get started, we'll talk about why we selected the topic of family engagement and really why this is such an important topic for students with intensive needs. The National Center on Intensive Intervention arose from a critical and growing need to improve academic and behavioral outcomes for students with disabilities. And while there have been many successful initiatives that have improved outcomes for students with disabilities in the past, data show us that a subset of these students are not responding to those traditional supports and really need something more individualized and intensive. Data from the National Center for Education Statistics show us that 1 out of 3 students with disabilities has a discipline problem. Academically, these data show us that a majority of students with disabilities are still struggling with basic reading and mathematics skills. So it's data like these that really drive our mission at the National Center for Intensive Intervention. Our mission is to build district and school capacity to support the implementation of data-based individualization in reading, mathematics, and behavior for students with severe and persistent learning and behavioral needs. And to accomplish this mission, we go about this in a number of ways. First, we provide universal technical assistance by sharing evidence-based tools, research, and experiences from the field in the form of webinars, reports, tools charts, and other resources on our website. We also provide intensive technical assistance to 12 school districts in 4 different states across the country, including Grand Haven Public Schools, where our panelist Kate Augustyn is the Director of Special Education. Our intensive technical assistance involves the delivery of training and ongoing coaching supports to help the districts build their capacity to deliver intensive interventions. Research and experience have really illustrated the value and impact of family engagement for students, especially students with the most intensive needs. Families are such an important partner when it comes to decision-making surrounding services and supports, but understanding multi-tiered systems of support such as RTI or MTSS presents its own challenges. family engagement is particularly crucial for students with the most intensive needs, but it comes with unique challenges. One example of the value of family engagement that has really emerged through our work in the field is a finding from our knowledge development sites. And those are districts across the country that were selected based on their experienced success in educating their students with disabilities. So NCII visited and conducted targeted interviews at these sites, including interviews with parents, to learn what factors facilitated their success in supporting students with disabilities and their delivery of intensive interventions. So the importance of family engagement for students with intensive needs was a common theme across those sites. We found that meaningful engagement and involvement of families in decisions about program planning was important for supporting the implementation of intensive intervention. All sites reported efforts to increase family involvement related to intensive intervention, but they also noted varying degrees of success with their efforts. Interviewees spoke to the importance of establishing regular and systematic communication with families, addressing home life challenges, and establishing strong, trusting relationships with schools and specific members as part of their strategy. So we'll now hear from Kate Augustyn, the Special Education Director of Grand Haven Area Public Schools. So at this time, I will turn the presentation over to Kate.
What I'd like to do is just talk very briefly about how we have been successful in engaging our parents at various levels in the Tier 1, 2, and 3 at our elementary, middle, and then high school levels. At our elementary levels, we have worked really hard to have parent nights, and I'm sure most of you do that as well. Certainly if you're a Title I school, you know that having parent nights is something that you have to do, but what we have worked really hard to do is incorporate our positive behavior intervention supports models into each of our parent nights, explaining what that is, explaining how it looks at all different levels, and having various members of the teams within each public school, each elementary school, and we have 7 of them, talk a little bit about that. We also talk about our interventions in our math and our reading programs, and how the MTSS model works into that, looking at our Tier 1 and how all of our teachers, our general ed teachers work with that, our Tier 2 models, and talking about how that is really incorporating some of our specialists as well as our general ed teachers, and then our Tier 3, which looks a lot at incorporating most of our specialists, and always incorporating the parents knowing what that means, what their children are doing within these intervention times. And I think we've had good success having our parents feel comfortable with that and enjoying that, and enjoying what we do with them. We also work very hard to look at the kind of character of each of our buildings, because certainly the character of the school kind of is the mindset of the principal, and so that principal sets that stage, talking to all of our parents about what they do, and it looks a little different at each of our elementary buildings, but that's kind of what makes it interesting, I think, and intriguing. We also send letters home about PBIS and MTSS, email blasts, and individual letters to individual families. That sometimes helps us to cover those families that are not able to come into school, because certainly some of our most significant parents have trouble coming into school, and what we do sometimes with that is have some of our staff members go out and meet our families, or go out and meet our families either in their homes or in areas around Grand Haven where there's a place where everybody wants to meet. Finally, we work really hard with our PTAs to help explain MTSS and our models, and then also in our new parent packets, and as our principals take our new parents through their schools, talking about MTSS MTSS and our interventions for response to intervention. So our new parents know coming in that that is something we do. And then finally, we have our grade level meetings for each grade, and we're work hard to come up with plans and strategies for our students as groups, small groups, and then as individuals. And often when we're working with our individuals, which is mostly our Tier 3, parent input is definitely included. And with those grade level meetings often come child study meetings, and those incorporate even more parent input so that we can help our students to be as successful as they can and have our parents understand how important their input is. So that is what our elementaries do. At our 5-6 building, we work really hard to work with our Parent Connect piece. This year is our first year we've tried this, and we've had 3 meetings out of 4 so far. One that talked about behavior, one talked about math, and one with reading, and we will have one more in the spring. We work hard to bring all of our team members together. That would include our social workers, our psychologists, our reading specialists, as well as many gen ed teachers and our administration, to talk about very specifically. We also took video of it, and we put the videotape of it on the website for our 5-6 building, White Pines, as well as on our TV5 school district cameras and stations. And so our parents can go and watch it and watch what happens. And so if you weren't able to come that night, it's right there for you. If you're not able to get into school for some reason, it's right there for you, so that we were able to kind of have people look at it that way. So that was very, very helpful, and I think we felt really comfortable and very excited about that, and look forward to our spring one as well. Now in our 7-8 building, we have worked really hard as well to present to all of our families at orientation, which takes place at the beginning of the school year in parent packets, and what our MTSS model is. And again, by now, our hope is that many of our families have heard about this coming up through elementary, 5, 6, and into the 7-8 building. And so that's helpful, because by now people and parents have a pretty good understanding of what this means. But we also, with our new parents, and then also with our families that have students that are moving into our Tier 2 or Tier 3 models, we work closely with them individually to explain what our concerns are, to explain what our hope is that we'll do, and to explain how parents can help out at home. And this will take place often either in an individual parent meeting, or it will take place over the phone. Those are primarily the 2 that we do, although with our most intensive kids, often our teachers will go either to the home or meet at the library to talk about this with our families, to encourage them to talk about what we're doing, ask questions about what we're doing, and then come in and visit or meet with us with their student there to talk about that. So that's what we've done at our 7-8 building, and we've had quite a bit of success with that. Finally, from a district, we are very committed to making sure our parents and our community is very involved in understanding our MTSS model and our RTI model, because we feel it's very helpful, and it really works with some of our most significant students to help them to be more successful. We have a leadership team that is based on the My Blissy model, which is a RTI model out of Michigan. And that is made up of parents, a lot of community members, school staff, and administrators. We meet 3 times a year, and actually just had a meeting last week. And we talk very specifically about what can we do as a school community and a community as a whole to incorporate more parents into figuring out and knowing what we do at all 3 tiers, and how our Tier 3 families and our Tier 3 students can be more successful, not only in school, but within the community. So that has been a successful part of what we do. And then finally, I think as so many do, we work really hard to ensure that we try to bring out what the MTSS model looks like, not only in our school environment, but also in the community. And we've done that through holding some community some community meetings with members of the community that want to come in and see what each school building is doing and what our school improvement program looks like. And those have been very helpful and have been very exciting, I think, both for our community and our school community. Finally, when we look at taking MTSS into the community, one of the things that I think we're most proud of and that we feel works the best is what we called our multi-agency team. Our multi-agency team is made up of about 15 different organizations that are in our community now. Some of these would include some of our religious organizations and affiliations, as well as our community mental health, Department of Human Services, our police, and are both in the county and right in Grand Haven area public system as well, and then incorporated in that, as well as our Salvation Army, our truancy department, our court system, and then our wraparounds and many of our other even Head Start and preschool programs. We all meet together once a month to talk about specific students or families that have signed waivers so that we can discuss their concerns and their needs, so that all of these people come together to really talk about specific families and how we can all kind of wrap ourselves around them and help them out. This is the 4th year we've been doing this, and it's been very, very helpful. And we really find that that has helped us to really bring families together and understand, especially some of our most significant families, that we're here for them and we work together for success. Central School, which is our alternative school, works very hard to get mentors involved with the community. They have a very specific mentoring program that is in its 2nd year and is moving along. I think finding mentors for some of our older, more significant students can be difficult, and we're always looking for those, but being very intentional on looking for those has been helpful, and we have found some incredible mentors that have helped some of our most difficult students start becoming very successful, and that is a great thing to see. So we are pretty excited about all of the things that we're doing here, and that kind of is an overview for how we take everything to our community. And then finally, just looking at a brief kind of overview of what I've talked about, the MAT team for our community and all of our community members has been very helpful. We do a backpack giveaway every fall with some of our more significant families to give backpacks, and during that time we talk about school with the families in those areas, so we go to them. We bring backpacks to them as well as food, and then we have our administration from each of our elementary, middle, and high schools come to talk about school and about positive behavior intervention supports, as well as interventions in reading and behavior and math and what that's going to look like in each of their buildings, and that is a very helpful piece. We do a lot of play and learn for our preschools. That's also taking our preschool teachers out into the areas where some of our more significant families live and giving an hour of what preschool would look like to our children and to their parents, and giving away books as well as food, and that has been very successful, and the kids love it, and I think parents then are more likely to sign up for preschool, and that is kind of our earliest kiddos that we get involved with. We also, for our early childhood special education kiddos, we have parent nights 3 to 4 times a year. We provide child care and food, and we talk about curriculum, behavior, occupational or physical therapy, speech, and then summer ideas at the end. And that has been very helpful for some of our most intense little people to get them hopefully on the right track early on, so we can get them going and to be as successful as they can in our group here at Grand Haven and in our society as a whole. So that is my piece, and I appreciate everybody listening, and if you have any questions, I know we have time at the end for you to discuss with us. So thank you very much, and I will turn it over to Laura.
Thank you, Kate. Next we have Kelly Orginski presenting a little bit about her perspective as part of the Michigan Alliance for Families. So Kelly, I will turn it over to you at this time. And Kelly, it looks like your line is still muted. Let's see, Kelly?
Hello, you got me?
Hello. There we go. Sorry, for some reason you were still muted.
Okay. We are both the Federal and State Parent Training Information Center, and everyone who works for us is either a parent or family member of a child with disability. We've been around about 7 years. In the beginning, we really looked at what is this thing called parent involvement and parent engagement. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information around some evidence-based practice, some models, and some practices that we really started to say, this isn't just a nice thing that we do for parents anymore. How do we make sure parents are getting what they need to be involved so their children can have better outcomes in their education? So we looked around, and there was not a lot out there specific to parents with disability. So there were some really other good models out there that we've used pretty successfully since then. So just to give you an idea, what we looked at too is that parents as learners, that there are adult standards for learning. And one of the things we keep telling our staff and that we always talk about is that parents typically that come to us, there's something they need help with, that these adults tend to be problem-centered learners. So they want to know, how do I do this? What's this information? What's going on? What resources do I have? So we really looked up at lining adult learning standards, content learning standards, practice-based learning, adult learning standards, and research evidence-based learning standards with what we do to have better outcomes for families of children with disabilities. So just that we also looked at the need of how parents get information and what's the best way to get that to them. We also looked at what does parent involvement look like, and we constantly use Epstein's models. It is a foundational piece for the work that we do, and I believe we'll be talking more about that later, but I just want to give you an idea of what that looks like. And we also looked at the PTA parent involvement standards, and we really aligned not only the standards, but with the federal standards, the mixing standards of measurement, and then what we do. So when we're because we are evaluated by everybody and their brother, we really looked at how do we make sure we're aligned up so we have better outcomes. So this is just, I'm not going to go through these slides, but I know the slides are available to you after that. We took the PTA standard, we looked at the national model at mixing, and then we also looked at what we do, just so you can see that we're lined up and trying to really get good data-based decisions about how do we involve parents and what they do. The other thing we looked at is we have what are called parent mentors. They are they're typically women right now. We've had a few men, but people who live and work in the communities that they are. And we looked at standards, what does mentoring mean? And we came up with some good standards from Carnegie Institute and some other ones. But our parent mentors are really helping parents go from the I voice to the we voice, so we can help contribute to how do we make this better. Our mentoring is really about building trust. It is in respect, and it's reciprocal. Mentoring is not coaching. It is not necessarily teaching, although both of those are components of it, but you're giving as well as you're getting in a mentoring relationship. It's ongoing, long-term, and goal-oriented. It's not just about talking about what all the problems is. It's about finding a solution to what's going on. And it helps build skills so they can partner better, so their students have better outcomes. We're really about getting consistent, good information in the parents' hands so their kids can have better outcomes. Some of the long-term outcomes of mentoring is there are parents with skills to mentor their parents so you can pay it forward. There's a strong network of parents within Michigan that we continue to grow and build. We started out with 5 people in our project. I think we just went, I know we just went statewide, and I think we're up to 32 plus. And there's increased involvement in parent involvement in schools. And we have the data actually that shows that what we're doing is working. One of the core beliefs when we started this out 7 years ago is not looking from outside to fix communities, but looking in. So Michigan Alliance Families, one of our core beliefs is that most communities have the resources, but frequently don't have a way to organize them and a way to get together to help support families do this thing called special education and get their kids the support and service that they need. So we went down again to an evidence-based model, and it's John McKnight. He did a lot of work in Chicago, building communities from inside out. And 3 of the tenets that we really work on is that's asset-based. We have our parent mentors, our staff person within each community, look to see what the community has. We have what are called stakeholder meetings. We have juvenile justice there. We have social workers there. We have school, we have churches. We invite a whole community to come together and we ask them a specific set of questions based on McKnight's positive asset map and to figure out, get people together, have people talk, what do we have? It also helps our mentor know what their communities look like. Although you live someplace, you don't always know everything that's out there. It is internally focused that we as people that are supporting families with children with disabilities, what do we need to do here and now? We know that people live in the community, know who the special ed directors are, you know who the dentist is, the caregivers, those kinds of things. And last but not least, it is all about the relationships, particularly for parents that have children that have higher support needs. It's really about coordinating, helping coordinate. If you've got Michigan Rehab Services and community mental health and doctor's appointments in school added in there, how do we help parents figure out what they need to do in their communities? How do we refer on but hold on? Our primary focus is around families and children with disabilities in the education system. We totally recognize that lots of families need support before school becomes important to them. So if we get a family that needs something else, we've built these community assets so we can refer the parent on, but check back with them, and when they're ready to do something with school, we can do that. So what does this look like? How do we implement the statewide model serving Michigan? Well, it really is about information and resources. So we have a statewide model that you can call and just get good information resources, both federal and state. We also have what are called our parent mentors, and they support at a local connection information support and resources. They provide that mentoring one-on-one kind of small group, and we'll talk more about that. They provide learning opportunities, and we'll talk about some of our partners that we can bring in. They use webinars, they use live people, they use local, what we call experts, to talk about things like positive behavior support. And that we support parent leaders and emerging parent leaders. What do you want to do next? Are you ready to move on? Do you want to sit on your parent advisory committee? Do you want to sit on the state advisory committee? Is there something you want to do that we can help support you around this thing called special education? So our parent mentors are really about developing those relationships with families and what we call professionals, which are typically educators, but it can be all community members. It's really about understanding the local systems and how those work, because in Michigan, every county looks a little bit different. Every school could look a little bit different. Offering learning opportunities that we are designed to meet community needs. It can be large group, small group, or online. And our learning opportunities, some people may call presentations or workshops, but really it's about, as an adult learner, you have the opportunity to learn this information, how you apply it, synthesize it, and use it in your life to have your children have better outcomes is a whole different skill set. And support and mentor family members. This is just a list of some of what we call our collaborative partners. Typically, they are nonprofits who, in the state of Michigan, but some aren't. The Wayne State, Michigan, Washington Intermediate School District helps us. So these are people who help us get information, help present to us, help us get things that are outside of the school system that often work well within the school system. And the other part of our job, and we are a mandated activity, Michigan Alliance for Families is, and so we've worked very hard establishing relationships with the other mandated projects in the state of Michigan. And this is just a list of them. You've heard Kate talk about My Blissy, which is we've worked very close to them, help them figure out what parent involvement is, what are the standards, how do you do that, how do you write it into their grants and into their standards of practice. So not only do we work at that local level about what's there, and then we work at kind of that state level of nonprofits, and then we also work with our other mandated projects. We're also very well aware of our state performance plan. We work for Part C under Indicator 4, or Part B under Indicator 8. We often laugh that we have this tattooed on our bodies. We're very serious about making sure how does the state performance plan influence our practice, how does have parents find their voices, how do we help communities figure out how to do parent involvement better to get better outcomes for their children. We work with early on as often as we can. And this is our state map. When we originally got together in Michigan Alliance for Families, we really wanted to fund a parent mentor in every county in the state. Well, that was a little cost prohibitive for us. So since this is where we currently are, really looking at connecting that local parent mentor with the communities to help families figure out not only the resources that are there, but how do we do this thing better called special education. This is who we are, working together to help families. This is our website, great website, and our 800 number.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And now we have our third panelist, Debra Jennings. And Debra, I will turn it over to you. and I just unmuted you.
Okay. Thanks, Laura. Thanks for including us in this really interesting and I think useful presentation. And I'm really excited about the number of people who are interested in this work and interested in involving families at more and higher levels. And this has been so central to the work that I've done since probably about 1992 or 1993. So what I'm going to talk to you about is a process that we have used with districts and with schools in the state of New Jersey, and have also really been sharing on a national level in order to help folks who are interested in what it takes to include, involve, engage, and partner with parents to be able to have a way of looking at what that takes and what it can look like once you have achieved your goals. This is a quote that is still so relevant. I think too often we sort of don't necessarily, we kind of leave parent involvement to be what happens after we do all of the other kinds of academic changes and implementation of interventions, but it's really important to really think about and make sure that you're addressing the parent involvement aspects throughout and early on as we're looking at improving the outcomes for infants, toddlers, youth, and children in our communities. As Kelly shared, we have based our work around the 6 types of parent involvement from the Joyce Epstein model, and this is a way to really organize your thinking around what is it that we have that's going on in our schools and our districts, and where are the gaps? What are the things that we need to do in order to really be able to address the breadth and the depth of the parent community, their needs, their interests, their capacities, and their strengths. And so using the Epstein model, that is a really excellent way to organize, and I think Kelly has shown that well in terms of how the Michigan Family Alliance built their model for the way that they're serving families with children with disabilities in Michigan. And so as we have a framework around multi-tiered interventions or RTI, however it's termed in your community. And so I like to look at how you can overlay the types of parent involvement over the multi-tiered interventions and really thinking about where are the places that we need to address parent involvement within each of the tiers of a MTSS or RTI model. So we've had some really great examples of effective strategies, and so and I think that Kate from Grand Haven gave us some really great ideas on how we can work with families, how we can help to support families and to meet the needs of families so that families are in a much better way able to support and advocate for their children. When we're looking at the Epstein model, we talk about one of the types being parenting. And I think in the Grand Haven School District, we have a lot of excellent examples of how you can build programs and communications and activities that will help parents to know what it means to have a very strong home environment in order to support their students. In the MTSS models, communication, I think, is one of the key areas, and it's not always clear in the policies or practices that districts and schools are implementing around RTI what it means to communicate with families, at what points we should what points we should communicate with families, and I think that's an area that really is in need of a lot of development and direction, because it's really important for families to understand your processes as early as possible. It's important for families to get the communication about RTI, about interventions, about assessments and progress monitoring, etc., early on, so that if their child isn't making the progress that is needed and there is a need for that difficult conversation around interventions, you are communicating with a parent who's had a lot of positive communication about RTI, and their first communication is not that really challenging communication that says, uh-oh, something is wrong. So it's really important to do that Tier 1 communication, so that as students require interventions, those conversations that we want you to have with parents at Tier 2 or Tier 3 are not as difficult, and parents will be much more willing to partner with you in helping to improve the progress for their child. The parent centers and parents are really resources for you, and it's important to find out what are the ways that parents can support the activities and the programs and even the interventions that schools are implementing. We often sort of either compartmentalize parents as only the resources, the fundraisers, the volunteers, but not necessarily as real partners, and we don't always utilize the parent organizations and PTAs in the ways that can best support students and also best support families. You know, the model for the Parent Training and Information Centers and the Community Parent Resource Centers is one which is fundamentally about parents helping parents. And the Michigan Family Alliance's concept of parents being mentors is one that really should be and is a great area to replicate even at the school level, because parents, particularly once they've figured out how to navigate systems, are the best people to talk to parents about that. And when we talk about culturally and linguistically diverse families, it's often that a parent can meet with a parent of a different, of their own language or their own culture, and really help and support and communicate with them in ways that schools and district personnel cannot necessarily do. Learning at home. There's homework, and then there's learning at home. And as a parent, we really need to know more about how we can really support our students in their education outside of the school environment. And when schools are sharing activities and that parents can do at home, it really makes a big difference. But also, it's important for parents to be involved in understanding curriculum and involved in knowing decisions and being part of the decisions and planning around the school's academic activities. And we have some really good suggestions and as has been shared, you will get copies of the PowerPoint at a later time. Decision-making is another area that's really important, especially in this model, because you really want to engage parents and the community as champions, as well as critical friends for the work that you're doing. And I believe, and many probably have heard me say, that when parents are informed, involved, and engaged, they are going to be your #1 champions for sustaining your efforts. I love the way that Grand Haven is engaging communities in meetings around their activities, and also have established a leadership team that includes parents, because parents have a lot to say, and they also are the best folks to support us in getting things done. And there's a lot of decision-making that has to be done particularly about individual students and the interventions that they will need, and it's important to make sure that parents are part of that decision-making process and that they're informed participants and partners in the decision-making. And then also as students reach certain ages, the students should be part of this decision-making about what's going to happen with them and how they are going to be supported, and setting their own goals for what they would like to do in terms of achievement. Grand Haven also talked about how they're collaborating with the community and bringing in those resources that we don't always have within the school or within the district, but those are resources that families can access that will help in terms of improving their students' achievement. So when you're looking at what you're doing already in terms of parent involvement, I offer this suggestion for a way to organize. Where are we? This is something that you can just sort of put up on a wall and say, what are the parent involvement activities that we're involved in right now, and what areas are they really supporting as we're implementing our RTI and MTSS models? How are we addressing communication and getting parents as resources and collaboration with the community, and what does it mean in terms of our ability to really effectively operate in our system of interventions? So when you're planning for effective parent involvement, you're going to identify your needs in terms of where are the places that we don't have parent involvement activities. You're going to look at the places where you are addressing the needs of parents, and also helping parents to bring their assets to bear in terms of improving their child's outcomes, improving the overall school and the overall district. And after brainstorming that, we then have the teams, and typically we do this in a group process that includes parents and staff, educators, as well as support staff and administrators, to really generate some ideas in terms of, okay, these are the activities that we need to use, that we need to put into place to address these needs. We're looking at the Epstein model, and there are some things that we can see in that model that are really going to be useful in our school and that we can replicate or implement here in the school. Once you have that list, you really want to look at, okay, what can we really do? We ask the group to apply a criteria that asks, what is going to be the impact of these activities? Does the activity address the needs of families of students with the greatest needs? Students with disabilities, English language learners? Are the activities culturally responsive to the various cultures in our school and our community? We also ask, is it doable? Do we have the resources? Do we have those, whether it's financial resources, staff resources, time resources? And are we going to be committed to getting this activity done? And so once we go through that process with the team, they then prioritize the activities, put timelines on them, and actually develop a plan to implement the activities. And this is the format that we use for their development of the plan. Asking for activities, anticipated results, who's going to do it, by when, and then really, really important, and I think the Michigan Family Alliance particularly pointed this out, to really look at how are we going to know that what we are doing is successful. What kind of data are we going to collect, and what should that data say if we are successful in implementing these activities? It's a intentional approach. It's a planful approach. It's an inclusive approach, and it can take several meetings, or it could take one meeting to get to a plan that you can then go forth and implement over the course of the next school year, part of a school year, or over a number of school years. And we've found that the schools and districts that participate in this kind of approach it really helps them to really get really organized and really think about and be intentional about, okay, this is what parent involvement is, and this is how we can really make a difference in terms of families. So I can't leave the call without giving, really giving you information about parent centers who are really many of whom really are the experts around how to engage and partner with and support families of children with disabilities. There are more than 100 across the country, and including many of the U.S. territories, and many are statewide. Some are for particular areas of states and also for particular communities, but they are all important collaborators in helping to make sure that their partners, professionals, as well as agencies, are working together to improve the system serving children with disabilities. And I have here a list of resources. And with that, I thank you for your attention and turn it back over to Laura.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Well, that concludes the part of our presentation where our panelists are presenting, but we have many questions that you all have submitted, both before the presentation and during. So my colleague Neo has compiled these questions, and we would love to pose them all to the panelists at this time. So let's get that started. And if you have any more questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat at this point, and we will get to as many as we can. So I'll hand it over to Neo with the questions.
Okay, great. So to start us off, one of the more general questions that have come up is how to deal with culturally and linguistically diverse families. Mm-hmm. And this is to all our panelists. So if you have any particular suggestions or comments to address those, that would be helpful.
Well, I can, from a Grand Haven perspective, we have been working hard with our ESL or our EL families. That's one of the areas we really put in as a school improvement piece as well. And what we do is we are part of it, I think, is the people that you have working with the families, and that the families feel comfortable with these people, with the people that work with them. I think a lot of the people we have working with our ELL families go out into the communities where our families live, go to their homes, go with them to doctor's appointments. And then we have cultural nights based on the cultural ethnicity and the different types of communities that that we're trying to serve, and we found that has been really helpful because you have school families that go together around these cultural nights to learn more about the specific culture, and that has been really helpful, and I think we are doing more and more of those, and we just finished one last week, which was which was quite successful. So I think having the people that you choose to work closely with your families, and then making sure that the families feel a part of the school community is important, and often we find going first out into the communities of the parents and the families, and then bringing them slowly into the school itself has seemed to work best for us.
And we hire the person. We hire a parent mentor in any given district and partner with them and help. They are the community person, and just what Kate said is we help them then how to interface with the school, get them comfortable. We hire people within the culturally diverse language populations to help parents figure out how to do this.
Perfect.
Yeah, cultural brokers are really important, especially if you have a population that is not only non-English speaking or challenged in terms of the language, but also if you have a population where there are a number of immigrants who may or may not have their legal residency and are concerned about interfacing a lot with institutions that may cause them to have to be deported. So often it's going to be better to have a community group or a house of worship or others who are working with them. We've been really successful in getting sort of parent-to-parent helpers going by establishing parent groups in many of those communities. And so they sort of use each other to make sure that their needs are met and their questions are answered without them being identified specifically.
I would agree with you especially from the church perspective. We work really closely with many churches in our area that kind of foster and take on specific cultures, and it has been very helpful. And they've been helpful also in teaching us more about how a specific culture or family may look at school involvement, and that's been really helpful to us as well.
Great, thank you. So another question that just came in is how can a small school or district implement family involvement without services near the school?
Well, I think, again, from my perspective in Grand Haven, we're relatively small compared to a big city, but we're probably bigger than some places. I think, again, I go back to, I think a lot of it is staff-related and how much the culture of the school district and community is getting parents involved. And initially, I think having opportunities for teaching staff and school staff to pull what community resources you may have, bringing them out into the community and then taking them from the community back into the school area. And I think, at least from our perspective, we've seen that the more community involvement we have, the more the families will become involved, and it's oftentimes bringing that out into the community rather than only having things at school. So that has been a little helpful for us, at least.
And that's totally what we do, Kate. We do the same thing. I mean, our parent mentors are working all over their communities in different places, and the information's at laundromats and libraries and the Dairy Queen and preschools. And we just bring the information, have them bring the information out, and then work with the schools to figure out how do you get that in the parent involvement back in. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And parents are often know about resources that the school may or may not know about that are in the community.
Absolutely.
And so it's really important to network with parents and keep parents connected so that they can access, so that they'll know what the resources are. They can share with each other the resources, and that may or may not happen within the school context. Should do what it can to help to make sure that those connections are available and the parents have those opportunities to work with each other to sort of figure out how to get the services that they need that are out in the community.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. And there's also a lot of interest from the participants to, and this question is for Kelly, to find out how you pick and choose your mentors and how you train the parents for the mentoring program.
Sure. We put, we put into communities that we're hiring. There's a job description. There's a very specific set of interview questions that they're interviewed and hired for this job. And then our training is really using a lot of stuff on our website. Our webinars around content information. We do lots of, 4 times a year we bring our entire staff together for 3 days where we talk about facilitation skills, what's the newest thing in the law. We also have weekly webinars with depending on where the staff is, with the director about the latest and greatest that's happening in rule changes or laws or questions that they have. So I would say our training is multi-layered. It's based on adult learning principles. Again, it's about that kind of just, here's the information, how do you apply it, how do you synthesize it within your own communities. So it is kind of an ongoing web-based. A lot of it is web-based, but 4 times a year we get face-to-face meetings. And then the people that are kind of our leadership team are available to any of our staff to go in and do some mentoring with 1 or 2 of them, just like our mentors do with parents, small group over specific things they might have self-identified as things they might need more content or skill sets around. So it's very, there's the structure, but we follow the same mentoring practice with our staff as that our staff goes with our community and with their parent.
Great, thank you. And just to quickly follow up on that, can you speak to the types of discrete data that you're collecting?
I think if you look back at the slide that I would be the statewide trainer, so I do not collect any data. But the data is collected both by Wayne State University, it is collected by both both our state and federal grants, and we have a fourth one connected by United Way. If you're really interested, and I know the Wayne State, which is our biggest, one of the biggest ones, is really around that mixing ladder that I talked about early on. That was around federal standards of parent engagement. I know that those are both connected. If you really wanted to talk more about discrete data, you would need to call Sherry Boyd. You get on our website. She's there. She's the operations director, and she would be able to talk very specifically about that. I just know the basics. I'm not in that. I'm not in all those pieces.
Okay, great. Thank you. And to open it up to the other panelists also, what is the role of a counselor in getting parents on board to assist students do better academically?
Well, from our perspective, our counselors have a variety of roles, and we kind of sometimes our counselors and our social workers kind of work together hand in hand, or in taking over what each individual student needs, and where we are, I think, with some of our most significant Tier 3 students, certainly the social workers are often more involved than the counselors just because it's a special ed need, and that's kind of how we work here. But at all levels, either counselors or social workers work to, first of all, our initial response is to call the families, talk about what our concerns are, hope to have the families either come in to meet with us, or if that doesn't work, going to find them in, where they feel comfortable, be it a library, McDonald's, or and sometimes where they are in there around where they live, if that's easier for them, and then pulling them in, seeing what they need from us. I think we're very blessed to have counselors and social workers that I think really give a lot of additional time and support. So they, figure out what the family needs and help as a team. We try to meet and think about what it is that those individuals' family needs. We do child studies. I know everybody does that, and that's just kind of bringing together the group within a school to talk about what does a specific family need and how can we work together to get those needs met. And then we just put an action plan in place and who's in charge of doing what for the action plan, and then the next time we meet, follow up to make sure everybody's done their job, and hopefully that has been the way we work. So that's what we try to do.
Well, thank you so much. I am going to wrap us up now because it is 1 minute until 4. So I want to thank all of our panelists so much for being a part of the presentation today. I think it was really beneficial to hear their perspectives. Just as a quick announcement, the webinar slides will be archived on our website, and before that, we will also email a copy out to all the participants, so you'll have that. Apologize, there was an email issue where we tried out a new registration system and maybe not everyone got the email directions, so we are working to resolve that, and thank you so much for your patience. And lastly, our next webinar is coming up in February. It is with Dr. Lynn Fuchs and Lee Kern, and it will be on designing and delivering intensive interventions in academics and behavior. So please join us for that webinar in February. You can stay tuned on our website for more announcements. And we would also just encourage you to please take our survey. You will be emailed a link to it, and it'll also pop up in your browser after this. We'd love to hear your feedback. We really take it into account when we are working with future webinars. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.